Yesterday we talked about what can the conditions for applying capital punishment and how people misunderstood that idea and they had a complaint because of the misunderstanding. Today I want to talk about a second thing, which is why they misunderstood. And I want to show you an illustration of the idea before we talk about it in general. So take the Chumash and open it to page 951. This is Devarim Beis, Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 24. The context here is that the Jewish people are drawing close to the area of the land of Israel, and God is giving them instructions how to deal with the various nations they meet on the way into the land of Israel. He talked about Moab and Ammon. Now he's talking about something else. 24. Rise up, cross Ammon brook. See into your hand, I've delivered Sichon, king of Heshbon, the Amorite, and his land. Begin to possess it and provoke war with him. This day I shall begin to place dread and fear of you upon the peoples of the entire heaven. When they hear of your reputation, they will tremble and be anxious before you. Okay, conquest. Conquest. Conquer them, take their land. So what does Moses do? Verse 26. I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kadeos to Sichon, king of Heshbon, words of peace. Oh, you did you? Wait a minute. God said provoke war and possess their land. And you sent words of peace? Doesn't that require some explanation? Let me pass through your land. Only on the road shall I go. I will not stray right or left. Food I shall purchase for money as provisions, and I will eat. And you will give me water for money, I shall drink. Only let me pass with my footgoers, as the children of Esau did for me, Moabites and Ar, until I cross the Jordan to the land of Hashem our God gives us. All I want is free passage through your land. And if we use your resources, we'll pay for them. That's all I'm asking for. But Sichon, king of Heshbon, was not willing to let us pass through. Hashem your God hardened his spirit and made his heart stubborn in order to give him into your hand like this very day. And then they had a war, and Sichon was conquered, and they took the land. Now, we have to understand, if God gives an explicit instruction, how is it that someone undertakes, you might think on his own, to do something which seems in contradiction to the instruction? So now, let you in on a secret. I say it's a secret because it comes from a section of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah which people don't usually study, and many people have misimpressions about it, including people who are educated. The section is called The Laws of Kings and Their Wars, very last section in the Mishnah Torah. This is chapter 6. Ein osin milchama im adam ba'olam. We don't make war with any person in the world ad shekorin lo l'shalom, unless we first offer him peace. We don't make war with any person in the world unless we first offer him peace. Echad milchamas reshus, echad milchamas mitzvah. Whether this is a war which you are commanded to undertake, or whether it's a war which is an optional war of discretion, either one, you always start with an invitation to peace. Now some of you know a little bit, have an idea rattling around in your heads. Aren't there nations we're supposed to wipe out? Sort of a kind of Jewish genocide? Aren't there? Does it sound like it? Maybe there are exceptions. Okay, let's keep going. He quotes another verse when you come close to a city to do war, first call out to them for peace. Imishlimu, if they agree to make peace with you, v'kiblu sheva mitzvahs shenistavu b'nei Noach alehem, and they are willing to accept the 7 commandments which God commanded for all mankind. Ein horgin mehen neshama. We don't kill anyone. V'harei hein lamas, and they will be subject to our rule if it's in the land of Israel. And they'll serve you. And some people still have this idea rattling around their heads. But aren't there nations we're supposed to kill out everyone? Aren't there? Are there? Let's see. If they don't agree to be subject to, in the land of Israel, second-class citizenship, and they do accept that, but they don't accept serving God in the 7 mitzvahs, or the other way around, they have to accept both conditions. And then he explains in detail in what way they have to serve us if it's in the land of Israel. Then he says in the 4th paragraph, V'im lo ishlimu, okay, if we offered them peace and they didn't agree to the peace conditions, or they were willing to be subject to us, but they wouldn't undertake to keep the 7 commandments that non-Jews are required to keep. Osim imahem milchama. You make war with them, and you kill them adult males. You don't kill women and children. When do we say that if they didn't accept the peace conditions, we make this kind of a war? That's an optional war, a war that's a discretionary war. The 7 nations who inhabit the land of Israel and the nation of Amalek, the rattling around idea makes an appearance. Yeah, those are the ones we're supposed to kill. Those are the ones we're supposed to do genocide. We're supposed to wipe them out. But wait a minute, the beginning of the paragraph is, if they didn't accept the peace conditions. So it means the 7 nations that live in the land of Israel, and Amalek, even Amalek, if they accept the peace conditions, you don't kill anybody. Nobody. So then, what happened to that rattling idea? I seem to remember something about killing them all out. That's only if they don't accept the peace conditions. But the first move is always peace. As Maimonides said at the beginning of the chapter, we don't do war with any person in the world, no exceptions. Not the 7 nations, not Amalek, they're not exceptions. We don't do war with anyone in the world unless we first offer them peace. So the idea that we have a vendetta to wipe out certain groups, and I suppose if you had an external DNA reader, which was programmed correctly, and you could say, we got them going back 3,000 years to Amalek, it's just not right. It's not true. Now this is the Rumba. The Dovid, who is the Rambam's famous critic, from his criticism of Rambam's details, you could see that he agrees with the general principle. The Lechem Mishnah brings down Rashi. Rashi holds only that you don't have to solicit peace for them, but if they ask you for peace, you have to give it to them. I made a study with one of my chavrusas a number of years ago. We couldn't find anyone who said simply on the basis of lineage that you kill someone. Ain't davar kazeh. Just not part of Jewish law. So what you heard about how to make a war with them is only if they don't accept the peace conditions. And they didn't tell you that, or you didn't remember that. Maybe it was said and it wasn't emphasized, you didn't remember that. But the idea that there is, in Jewish literature, the idea of wiping out a nation just because of its national, its national identity or its inheritance, its lineage, is simply not correct. Yeah.
Say that you ask the leader of a nation whether or not they want peace, and they say no. But the individual...
You're not playing modern woke the terminology on, right? The leader, they.
No, no.
Don't play that with me. That doesn't go here. You know, we don't bow to that stuff. The leader is he or she, but not they.
No, he meant like plural, like the Secretary of State, the President. Like
That's what he meant, right? Okay. I don't mean.
I'm just used to the idea that in today's world you could have a female or male leader, so I was just trying to say it could be either or.
Didn't say male or female.
I'm not
Don't make it
trying to be
don't make it plural. Don't make it plural.
No, I'm not trying to be
Okay, fine.
So let's say that the leader says we don't want peace, but the individuals within the nation on the whole want peace. So are you obligated to ask the individuals before you kill them, do you want peace or do you just care about what the leader would say?
I think you are obligated, and although I don't remember the Rumba mentioning explicitly, but first of all, he says you don't make war with any person in the world without offering him peace. So if you know it's a divided population, for example, we had in the case of Korach, where he led a rebellion against Moses, and the first thing God had Moses say to the people is, separate yourselves. Distance yourselves from them. In other words, take a stand, a public stand, against them. If you take a public stand against them, then you're not going to be implicated. So it's a question of your voluntary decision to take the position that you want to take. Now, if some of the people say, let's make peace, some people say, let's fight, presumably the ones who want to fight will fight, so then we'll fight with them. And those who, but you wouldn't use, representative, by the way, many medieval authorities hold that a legitimate government for the non-Jewish world is a government that has the consent of the governed. It's a very modern idea. If the people don't consent to be governed, then they don't count as legitimate government. We have a law that when we live in somebody else's country, we have to fulfill their laws, unless they compromise some fundamental principle of Judaism. We have to fulfill their laws, right? But only if their government is legitimate. And one condition of legitimacy is that the governed consent to be governed by them. So if someone said for himself, in the name of the nation, we want to fight, and the nation said they don't want to fight, we certainly would not take that as definitive. Yes, in the back.
So when you're offering them peace, you have to make terms for the peace, correct? Like, do you make the terms so reasonable, or terms that you know that they wouldn't agree to if you want to go to war with them, or if they're considered going to war?
The terms that are stated are detailed, and they're not up to you to make any terms you like. If they're living in the land of Israel, then they must be second-class citizens. This is the land of Israel. Even the Zionists tried, and they fought about it back and forth. That's why you have leftists who call themselves post-Zionists, because they don't like the idea that it's a Jewish state. It definitely is a Jewish state. The Torah's idea is different nations have their homes, they have pieces of geography that belong to them rightfully. That's the place where it's right for them to rule, to express their culture, and so forth and so on. And other people who come have to be subject to that culture and live by their rules. If someone comes to the United States, if he gets a permanent resident permit, he's not a citizen. He can't vote. He can't hold office. He's a second class. He's in a second class condition. That's right. He's coming to join he's moving into your country. The country doesn't belong to everybody in the world collectively, so they can move around as they please. So if you can control your borders, you don't have to let somebody into your country, and you have to let somebody into your living room. And if you want to let him in, and you want him to play the role that's appropriate, you tell him what the appropriate role is, then he can decide whether he wants to come or he doesn't want to come. It's his decision. You're not forcing him to do anything.
So, for example, with the historic Kingdom of Israel, or the historic Israel, parts of Jordan are now, parts of what is now Jordan used to be parts of the historic Israeli kingdom. Could we have told Jordan, hey, we want this land back? Obviously, they're going to say no. Will we be allowed to go to war with them in that case? Or you can say Egypt.
It's very interesting. I know only two things about this. I can't give you a full answer. I know two things about this. First of all, it is true that it's our land. Now, when others take over our land, that's because we're being punished for failure to live up to what God wants. We are told many times, if you don't live up to the rules that I give you, I'll treat you like other nations. And just as other nations are conquered and pushed out of their lands, and when you came into the land of Israel, you pushed other people out, I'll push you out also. This is not free, and I'm not going on vacation. This is the way you have to live. So I could imagine someone with vast Torah knowledge and analysis of the situation, I think I've even heard opinions like this, saying now is not the time because we are subject to a punishment for what we have done, and we don't have the right now to reoccupy the land. Some will say that until the Mashiach, we don't have that right. So that would mean, the answer to your question would be no.
We don't have the right to occupy the current land.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Then how do we have the right to occupy the current state of Israel?
Well, the truth is that we came here without violating anyone's laws. We bought property here. It was sold to us freely. And when the state was declared, the majority of the United Nations certified that they agreed with it. So if you're talking about the world population as a whole, sounds to me like we did something about for which there was no objection. Are there individuals that had objections? Sure there were. But anything you do will have some objections. You're not going to please everybody in the world. It doesn't have to be unanimous. So, and we occupied it side by side with other peoples who were here, largely Arabs. And then there was a decision to divide it into two states, one Arab state, one Jewish state, and we accepted that decision. And then all the neighboring states declared war on us. So then it was a defensive war. They're fighting to kill us. And the war was never, how do you say it? There was only an armistice. We only put down guns. We agreed to stop shooting at one another. Only Egypt and Jordan only Egypt and Jordan signed peace treaties with us. The other countries, Iraq is still at war with us. I mean, and Lebanon is still at war with us. They never signed a peace treaty. So we're sitting in a defensive position. I think that's the basic historical background. But the other thing is this. The Tanakh reports when Gidon became the shofet, the judge, that the king of Ammon sent to him, prepared for war, was bringing an army, and he said, I want these and these lands. So Gidon said, what do you mean? You want to take our lands? And he said, no, 300 years ago, or you took them from us. They were part of Ammon, and you took them from us, and I want them back. So Gidon says back to him, well, that's the parsha that I just opened up in the Torah here. You're making a mistake. We didn't take them from you. Other foreign kings conquered them from you. You lost them to them. We conquered them. See, by the time we conquered it, it wasn't yours anymore. You lost control of it. So that being the case, if I say to, let's say, Jordan, which was created after the First World War, really very late on the world stage, right? So listen, you took it but it didn't belong to you. It belonged to somebody else, and originally it belonged to us. And that being the case, we're just going back to where we were. We would have every right to do that. So I think that, although abstractly it's a right idea, this might not be the right time and place to put it into action. That I can't comment on. I just don't know enough to answer that. No question that when the Mashiach comes, it'll all be ours. There's no question that's predicted in detail. So it's definitely coming back to us eventually. Yeah.
If it's the case that you know Hashem is going to harden someone's heart to say no to peace, is there any point going through the ritual of offering peace, and then is there any value in this, the sequence of steps in of itself? Because if you'd known in advance that they were going to say no, couldn't you just have attacked and the outcome would have been the same?
No, it's a very good question. When you are given rules for the way a mitzvah should be done, so let me put in a general caution. Often in the Talmud, you'll find a reason for a mitzvah. even sometimes a biblical mitzvah, very often for rabbinic mitzvahs. Commentators point out what you are finding is a reason for the mitzvah, not the reason for the mitzvah. And it makes a gigantic difference. Because your question is motivated only by assuming that you have heard the reason for the mitzvah. And then you think that in this particular case the reason doesn't apply, then I could omit it. But if you admit that there are other reasons that could apply, then you wouldn't know that, and you wouldn't be able to make the argument. So it's very important to know that you're not getting a total picture of all the reasons for it, you're getting a reason. Now here I can think easily of another reason, and that is people should know how Jews make war. People should know what the Jewish attitude is to making war. That peace comes first. Even someone who's traditionally an enemy of yours, Amalek attacked us on the way out of Egypt. They came and attacked when we were in the wilderness. Just a vicious, bitter, aggressive attack. Still, when we confront them, we offer them peace. So it's important for the world to know what Jewish values are in this matter. Even if you know he's going to harden his heart, but you know we offered him peace first. That could be another reason, and there could be a dozen other reasons. So we never detach the mitzvah from the reason and say I can satisfy the reason in this case differently, and therefore I don't have to keep the law. But some people want to say that kashrus is based on health. Many commentators say it has nothing to do with health, but some do say that it does have something to do with health. They say, well, now we know to boil the pork, so we won't get trichinosis. Yeah, you do, and that would handle the health problem, but nobody can guarantee that that's the only problem. So I think that's a very important general point to keep in mind. Yeah.
Clarification question on this idea of asking for peace before war. So say somebody hurt somebody that you know, as Shalom, and you go to them and say they represent their family, they're the head of the household or whatever.
Now who's the they now? The one who hurt or the one who got hurt?
The person who's the head of the household.
Of the one that
No,
was injured?
No, the person who got hurt. So that person goes to the head of the household of the person who hurt them, right? And he says to them, I'd like to make peace with you, right? Would you like to make peace with me? And he says, I hate you and your family. Does that justify now going on a murder spree against that person and potentially even his family because he said that he does not want to accept peace? Is this stipulation that you have to ask for peace before you make war? Does that then justify making a war in any situation if you ask for peace?
Well, I think the question that you're asking, I don't know if you've thought out carefully the conditions of the question, because someone from the clan A injured someone from clan B.
Right.
The leader of clan B said, I would like to make peace. The leader of clan B said, no, I don't want to make peace. Think for a second. No, I don't want to make peace. Then there are two issues here. One issue is the injury that the member of Clan A caused to a member of Clan B, and the other is the statement of the leader of Clan A that I'm not making peace, which means I'm prepared to make war against you. So it's not that I'm voluntarily choosing to make war against him, he's declaring war on me. You didn't take that into account. And I think this is very important because there's a big difference in Jewish law between punishing a past crime and preventing future crime. And I don't know if you study these things in international law, but there's something called the law of proportionality. That if someone attacks you, you can only use proportional force in retaliating or defending yourself against his attack. So people say, well, if you use bows and arrows, you have to use bows and arrows. If you use rockets, you have to use rockets. If he doesn't have tanks, you can't use tanks. That's dead wrong. That's not what it means. Look it up. Google it. It means you should only use as much force as is necessary to stop the attack. But if he's shooting with bows and arrows, the only way you can stop that is with ballistics, then you use ballistics. You don't have to take his attack on the grounds. So I started like the guy comes in and breaks into your home. He's going to kill you and steal your property. He has a knife and you have a gun. You can't defend yourself with a gun. You can use a knife because it's not proportional. No, you can defend yourself with a gun. He's coming to attack you. You can use any force that's necessary to repel the attack. Now, if this guy says, we're not willing to deal with you in peace, with the war, so then a preventative strike is perfectly all right. He's declared war on you. You have to wait for him to shoot bullets and kill people before he can shoot back? Absolutely not. None of that is morally required, and in terms of international law, it's not required either. Yeah.
The thing about offering peace to Amalek, how does that work with the requirement to blot out the memory of Amalek?
Requirements of what? I didn't hear.
You said you have to offer Amalek peace, but then there's a commandment that you have to, I forgot the exact words, but like blot out the memory.
So that's what the Rambam is explaining. It's where he doesn't accept peace. Those are the conditions only if he doesn't accept peace. And the proof of it, and the Rambam brings it later, is the verses we just saw. God said to Moses, make war with them, wipe them out and take their land, and he offered peace. There it is, black on white, in the Torah itself. It means that this is the process of going to war. The process of going to war is first to offer peace, and then if they don't accept peace, then you go to war. That's part of the process. So God says to us to go to war against Amalek. In his own Torah, you have a proof that the offer of peace it comes first. So that's the procedure. So in that particular verse, that one verse out of 10,000, he didn't mention that part of the procedure. So you have to read the rest of the book to get the rest of the conditions. And yeah.
Relating back to Josh's question, from that perspective of you can only retaliate with enough force that's necessary to stop the attack, any like force above like what's necessary can be considered necessary. Like from that perspective, what's the view on America using like nuclear weapons in World War II to finish the war? Was that considered necessary, or was that excessive?
I can tell you what I've read, and I'm not an expert on all the details, but as far as I understand, of course it was necessary. What was the alternative? Invade Japan? Invade Japan would mean that tens of thousands of American soldiers would die. Since Japan is the aggressor, I don't have to sacrifice the lives of the victims in order to lessen the damage to the aggressor. The only point that I have heard, which seems to me logical, is what they should have done is exploded a bomb over the open sea to show them what the bomb does and let them make up their own minds. But even that point is weak because the first bomb that was exploded in Hiroshima didn't change their minds.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in other words, if we wouldn't know that, so we should have tried, but as a matter of fact, we know it wouldn't have worked because even bombing one of their cities didn't get them to give up. Why do tens of thousands of American soldiers, when we are the victim of their aggression, have to lose their lives so as to spare them from loss and suffering? Why? I don't see any logic to that whatsoever.
So the point at which it's considered like overly necessary is when the aggressor submits or is knocked out or does not continue to fight.
So let me. Maybe I didn't quite understand the what you were asking. I see it. So let me try to reformulate it in my terms, and then I may not be able to answer it. In other words, you're saying there may be different levels of force which could stop the aggression, but a lesser level of force might cost me, the victim, losses that a greater level of force wouldn't. So I have to pay the price in losses to stop him with a lesser measure of force, or can I ignore the price to me? So I'm trying to think now. I know there's something about this about using like children as shields, whether it's appropriate to kill innocent people in order to kill the guilty people. And there, as I remember it, the argument is roughly the same thing. What's the alternative? Is the alternative that he's going to kill some of my innocent people? I don't have to accept that. Why do my people have to die? Since to save my innocent people have to die, to save his innocent people. He's the one who attacked me.
Wow, that's interesting.
So I think that would be the idea. So the same thing would be true here. I have the right to stop the aggression, and I have the power to. I shouldn't use more power than is necessary to stop the aggression, but if less power is going to cost me losses when I'm the victim, I don't have to do that. I have to sacrifice my people in order to lessen the impact on the aggressor.
So the subway system in Manhattan about 2 or 3 months ago. This soldier, I think he was a Marine. He had minor knowledge in like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so he knows how to choke somebody out essentially.
Yeah, I read about this thing.
Yeah, and the guy, and there was a guy doing something on the train, basically
Threatening.
yeah, inciting war, for lack of a better term, and he chokes him out. But from a professional standpoint, from a black belt in jiu-jitsu, he used too much force because he ended up killing the guy. But if you didn't have the knowledge enough in the sport to know when was too much, should he be tried for the force that he used?
First of all, you have to know that the threats that that the fellow was making were credible. That on previous occasions he had assaulted people on the subway. He was definitely dangerous. It wasn't a judgment call. It's something where you could dispute it in terms of psychologists. No question that he was dangerous. Number two, he didn't take him down. 2 people or 3 people took him down. He held him, but other people holding him as well. He's a big fellow, a strong fellow, and he had to be held and restrained. Number 3. The whole thing took place between 2 stops. It wasn't 15 minutes, as some of the press reported. It took place between 2 stops. I've ridden on that. I grew up in New York. I know what the New York subway's like. There's those, unless you're going across the river, there are no 15-minute stops. So to say that he could judge, he can handle it for 3 minutes and 42 seconds, but he can't handle it for 4 minutes. That kind of judgment, no one can make. All he knew is that this guy threatened people. There were a lot of innocent people there. He was certainly dangerous. He was holding him to stop him. More than that, I can't say. Was it unreasonable for him to use that force under those conditions? And he knew it was unreasonable, and he knew he wasn't preventing anything by holding him that way. That a very detailed examination would have to show on the basis of witnesses, on the basis of videos, on the basis of testimony of doctors and people who trained him in warfare. He was a Marine, who trained him in warfare. Whether he would know something like that or not, I could imagine it's so, but I can easily imagine that it isn't so. Also, that he would have known that the person was going to die. The thing has to take place, and he's holding him, and 2 minutes later, the train comes to a stop. You know he's going to die in 2 minutes? It's going to be. I think it'll be hard to show. We'll see. We'll see what the trial shows.
Interesting. I just wanted to know your point of view on
Yeah, I think that he was definitely dangerous. He definitely had to be stopped. I mean, people are pushed in front of the trains. People are attacked on New York subways all the time. So poor Mayor Adams has not fulfilled his promise to really, cut the crime there. I'm sure he would like to, but he hasn't been successful yet. Okay, now, having said this, I want to point out that this idea that people are given instructions and they do things which seem not to be included in the instructions, or maybe they are put the instructions in question, is something which happens over and over again. Jacob is living with his uncle, his father-in-law. He's married to his father-in-law's two daughters. At a certain point, God tells Jacob, go home. I've seen what they're doing to you. They've been cheating you. I've seen they turned against you. Go home. Okay. So what does Jacob do? The creator of the universe tells Jacob, go home. Well, he calls his wives out for a meeting, out where the flocks are, where there are no spies around the corner. And he says to them, listen, you know how I served your father. You know that he cheated me. You know that everything I did in good faith. You know that he prospered under my care. And now, the Creator told me to go home. End of speech. That's it. So they say, have we any share in our father's house? He's treated us like strangers because he sold us. And in our tiny subculture, you don't sell women as wives. So we have no share in our father's house. And now, they end their response with, and what God told you to do, do. That's really striking. Is it up to them? Was he asking them for permission? If they had said no, what would have happened? Well, one thing's for sure, he's not going to impose it on them. If you have the standard stereotype of ancient Near Eastern marriages and you put us in the stereotype, he should have come home and said, pack up, we're leaving in 2 hours. He didn't do that. He explained the whole situation to them and left it to them to react. If they had said, it's our father, it's our culture, it's our home, it's our friends, we don't want to leave, I think Jacob would have had to say, I'm going because God told me to go, and you don't have to go. He didn't impose it upon them. That's because that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects us to treat people, especially wives. And he did it in the way, based on his background knowledge, that if God told him to go back, this is how he wants him to go back. Not another way. Same thing true with Moses. A second. Same thing true with Moses. When God tells Moses to go down to Egypt to be his agent to rescue the Jewish people, he goes to his father-in-law and asks permission to go. Now, God told him to go down to Egypt, so if his father-in-law had said no, he would have said, look, I have to do this, I'm sorry, I would have liked to reach an agreement with you, but I'm telling you why I have to do this. But you don't just walk out. You're living with your father-in-law, you're married to his daughter, and he was taking his wife and the children with him. He sent them back afterwards, but he took them with him. You don't just walk out, you don't do that. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a kind of modus operandi. This is how you deal with people. This is how you interact with people. And when I give you an instruction, I expect you to carry it out with that background. Oh yes, I remember. There's another one which is even more striking. God tells Abraham to circumcise himself and his clan. The Midrash tells us that Abraham went to his Canaanite confederates. He had Canaanite confederates, people who joined him in a war against 4 kings. Mm-hmm. And he asked them, God told me to circumcise myself and my clan. What do you think? Now, doing that could be taken as a sign of separation, a sign of disconnection. Abraham's not going to refuse to obey God's command because they'll say no, but he's not going to just sort of in your face, I don't care about you. That's not the way God wants us to treat people. We want to interact with people. Here we're talking about non-Jews. Even so. The ways of the Torah are pleasant, and all its paths are peace. You have to try to operate with peace with respect to other people. And when instruction is given, you have to know that the paths of peace are the background conditions under which you operate. Again, they won't force you to compromise, but they give you clues to how to do it. We have commandment of charity. Now here, this is a general subject, which maybe we'll do in more detail at one time, but there are certain laws which govern relations between Jew and Jew that don't govern relations between Jews and non-Jews. Particularly, there are stringencies, care, kindness, and support that one Jew owes to another Jew, which he doesn't owe to non-Jews. Why is that? Isn't that prejudicial? Isn't that, in-group, out-group, and so forth and so on? Here's one, for example. You make a loan to someone. If he's a Jew, it's a personal loan, you can't charge interest. It's a non-Jew, you can charge interest. Now, we paid for that because a whole philosophy was concocted. If your rules tell you not to charge interest on a loan to another Jew, you are recognizing that as evil. For you, it's a forbidden thing to do. And then when your rules say you can do it to a non-Jew, what your rules are saying is you can do evil things to non-Jews. That's the way it was sold, and we suffered in medieval times for that attitude. The truth is a million miles from there. Let me ask you a question. You run a car rental agency. You've purchased 100 cars, and you advertise them. People rent your cars, and they pay you for renting your cars. Are you doing something evil by charging money for renting your cars? You're going away for the summer. Your house is empty. You offer it for rent. People can rent your house for the summer. Are you doing something evil by charging money for renting your house? Then why would it be evil charging money for renting your money? It's your stuff. You don't have to give it to them. You're offering them to have use of it. Why shouldn't you charge money for that? There's absolutely nothing evil about it. Nothing at all. But, and this is what Rav Hirsch says, the Jewish people is a family. We call ourselves B'nai Yisrael. Yisrael is the name of a person. And we are all his descendants. Yes, converts counted as his descendants also. That's a Mishnah in Bikurim. We're going to talk about that. We're all his descendants. And the rules for treating family members are not the same rules of treating people who are not family members. I think everyone recognizes that. People who are not family members, you must treat with justice. People who are family members, there's a special relationship, a special requirement to treat them with love and consideration and commitment that is not required for everyone, generally, who aren't family members. So the laws that apply specifically between a relationship between Jew to Jew are relationships which are governed by the stronger bonds of family ties, and the laws that govern our interaction with non-Jews are governed by justice. If you have a law that's specifically designed to govern our relationship with non-Jews and you think it's unjust, then you have a complaint. But the fact that we have different laws with respect to the family, that's something which is reflected, I think, in normal values all over the world. You don't treat your family members like strangers, and you should treat strangers justly. No, you have no excuse to victimize strangers, but the family member is not enough just to treat them with justice. So now, I was in the middle of getting to a final point, but that's the general idea, and the various laws that you have vis-a-vis your family. Okay, got 90% of it. Yes.
In terms of treating every Jew with this, with a more like respect than a typical non-Jew in terms of those laws, what about treating like a Jew who is in your eyes is considered evil, who you try to meet, who you've tried to make peace with multiple times and refuses, and so you treat with less respect than even the non-Jew.
Okay, you're using the word respect. I think, if I remember correctly, the last 300 seconds, I didn't use the word respect. I talked about kindness and consideration and support and commitment. I didn't talk about respect. So let's leave respect out of it. But there's no question that there are Jews who commit crimes for which they have to be punished. Punishment, you could say, is not consideration and kindness, although it is in a certain respect because it helps them spiritually. And then there are Jews who commit such terrible crimes that they have to be executed. So obviously, I'm not going to treat them the same way I treat all Jews. Right? They have forfeited that by virtue of the crimes that they have committed. But like I said yesterday, when you talk about crimes, we have a very, very fine line. That has to be full knowledge and deliberate. And that has to be assessed by giving a warning before the person is attacked. And there's also a special place for people whose crimes endanger the community. So those people, if they're endangering the community, one takes very stringent measures against them, because you're protecting yourself. And I'm mixing things together here, and I apologize, but you asked a question that's complex. Remember I said about a half hour ago, there's a difference between punishing a crime that's already been committed versus preventing a crime. So to punish a crime that's been committed, that's a court procedure. There have to be witnesses, to follow court regulations, and then have an assessment that the court decides that this is the punishment the person should get. But if the person is at the present and the foreseeable future, acting so as to injure people, so that you are preventing injury, that's another matter altogether. You don't pull him into court and stop him. You stop him. Because he has no right to victimize people, no right to injure people. So protecting yourself is different. Someone's a danger to the community, then we take much more stringent measures and much less formal measures to stop him. So this person, of course, when you talk about, for example, I guess that's what I wanted to mention. To love. Who are you supposed to love? Now, I'm going to tell you something which may sound strange to you, but it's good for you to know it. The verse does not say, love your neighbor as yourself. It's not a question of his living in the next door apartment. That's not the issue. The word reya in Hebrew does not mean neighbor. It means friend. And friend here, like the Gemara comments, reya mitzvos, because he shares your ultimate commitments, he shares your beliefs, he shares your ultimate values, that's the person whom you're commanded to love. So you're not commanded to love everybody. There's another religion which thinks there is such a command, and I think it's very difficult to make sense out of it. Now, a person can sacrifice his position as friend. If he acts in a particularly vicious way, then he sacrifices his condition of being called a friend, and that being the case, you won't be required to love him. That could happen even with a family member. It could happen even with a family member. All right, I'll leave the illustration out. I mean, a person can do enough, to deserve to be expelled and rejected by the family. The person hurts the family, and 3 is a continuing threat to the family. That can happen.
So in that case, if you're somebody who gives, if you give loans, and normally to a Jew you wouldn't charge interest, would you be allowed in this case to offer to charge this Jew interest if he's if he's not trustworthy, if he hasn't committed a crime but he's consistently lied and has done bad business?
Okay, there are. What kind of record a person has to have to sacrifice the condition of being a friend is a complicated business, and there are lots of details to it, so I can't do it in one short sentence. All I can tell you, but you're asking an interesting question, a practical question. Suppose somebody is not a re'ach mitzvahs. Can you lend money to him with interest? I don't know in detail. I don't know where the cutoff point is for the question of lending money with interest. I'm trying to think how the verses go with respect to lending with interest. I think there it says your brother. You shouldn't lend money to your brother for interest. And he could sacrifice the condition of being your brother. That could happen. So I'm guessing now, but that's what I think is right. We're going to have to quit, yeah?
What if in charging him interest then, he's not holding to the values, he's forfeited his title, but what if by doing that you push him further away and you remove the possibility that he'll become your brother again?
Oh, if there's any possibility of pulling him back, that takes precedence over everything. Surely. That means he's not absolutely committed and absolutely fixed. He's fluid, then that would take precedence over everything. Yes?
So I had always heard it translated as love your neighbor.
I know, I can't help it.
What does friend mean in that?
Well, in that case, the Talmud translates it as re'ach mitzvos. That is to say, he's committed to the program of serving God with the mitzvahs that God commanded.
Does that mean he's Jewish?
Oh, for sure.
Well, I mean,
Exclusively Jewish?
Any Jew? Or?
Well, again, it depends upon whether he's committed to that program of life. We're talking about a subset of Jews now, not non-Jews. And then the question will be, why isn't he committed? If he isn't committed because he doesn't know any better, which is probably 98% of the people who aren't committed today, then of course you treat him with kindness. The Rumba writes about this explicitly in Hilchos Mamrim. Treat him with kindness and consideration and sympathy to enable him to come to know how the world works, what it runs on, and what the responsibilities are. Talking about a person who knows better and has turned his back on it. And especially if he's aggressively recruiting other people to do that. There was a fellow who was a yeshiva guy, and he stepped out. He attacked my work. We wrote a whole book attacking my work.
Wow.
And I answered a good part of it. I answered it's on the net. And he titles himself the second son. Remember the Passover Seder?
Yeah.
Remember the four
wicked
sons?
son, the Russia.
The wicked son, the Russia. He titled himself the second son. That's me. I'm the wicked one.
Provocative title.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy for which I think you could charge interest on as long.
Is there rules like other than in charging interest on money? Are there any other rules that we treat non-Jews differently than Jews? Or is,
Yes.
why is that
Lashon
the
hara.
one-
I mean, so it's,
You can speak Lashon Hara about non-Jews?
except for the fact that, as the Chafetz Chaim says, if you get in the habit of speaking Lashon hara about people, you'll develop bad habits. Remember, Lashon hara is true. If you got a Lashon hara editor, New York Times, it would reduce 94% of the paper. All the rest of it is Lashon hara, right? What is the crime, moral crime, in saying true things about other people? It's not obvious there's a moral crime. It's a very high, elevated, super moral state not to do that. But if the person did it or said it or it's true about him,
Anything other than those two?
okay, there's a lot. So
Why did they focus on the money thing in the medieval times then?
because they all had to borrow money from Jews.
Oh.